In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is Sunday. It's December 18th, and this is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Cotillo. I have with me Mr. Sal Lito. What's going on, Sal?
Ciao, everybody. How are you?
Good. Did you lose a bet? Are you doing an Italian accent the whole time, or what?
No, it's me. What are you talking about?
Right.
No bet. I'm in a good mood, remarkably, for a guy who is going to be in zero fantasy championship matchups next week. I'm in a good mood.
That's good. I'm glad to see that you've powered through the losses and then you're in a good mood. That's great. That's great. Someone who might not be in as good a mood, I'm not sure. We'll have to check. Steve Marcus is with us as well. What's up, Steve?
Oh, no, you are absolutely right. I'm not in a great mood. Not in a great mood at all. It seems like everyone else's happiness is coupled with my misery these days in this football season. So, after 15 weeks, you think I'd be used to it, but still kind of hurts. So, yeah, I'm back. That's all I can say.
Yeah, welcome back. We missed you. It was a tough show without you.
Yeah, it didn't sound tough. It sounded like you guys were just
got a little
fine.
Got a little long.
I felt like we were just talking aimlessly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys got real comfortable. It sounded like you were really comfortable.
There was no direction. There was no time concerns at all. Really, we just kept talking.
Yeah.
But we got very in depth on one game, so that's good. We have a lot to go through today. There was a lot of action today, hopefully, and yesterday. Hopefully, it helped some of you. Sounds like Steve and Sal are not in good places within their fantasy football leagues. I have a couple of seasons that I'm still alive in, so that's good. And hopefully some of you have some as well, so we can help you by analyzing these games to see what you need to do for next week to win your championships. Are you guys ready to roll?
Yes, but first, Sal, you've got to talk more about the Falafel Festivus. We've only got a few more days for entries for that, correct?
Yeah, that is right. We'd love to have all your entries in by Wednesday. So we're recording this on Sunday night. You're probably listening to it on Monday morning. So that gives you almost 3 days to work on it and get it into us. We've gotten some really good entries, some really funny stuff, and we've gotten some people from the fantasy industry who also have agreed to contribute with some airing of your grievances. So what you want to do is 60 seconds at the beginning of the clip, say who you are. If you're from the Fantasy Life app, say your app name, and go on for 60 seconds about who in the fantasy football world this year, a player, a coach, a league mate, a referee that screwed you on a call. What is it that hurt you in fantasy this year and kept you out of the playoffs or a championship? And send it over to us, falafelhouse@gmail.com. We cannot wait to air them on Friday's show.
Even if you just want to complain about your commissioner, even if he didn't do anything wrong, you just want to complain about him, that's fine too.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. I get to hear those complaints all the time. It's really great. And Kev, you can't really sell yourself short. One of these championship games you're going to be in is the Falafel Championship game. Is that not correct?
That is very correct. Yes, it appears as though I will make my first appearance in the Falafel Championship.
Defeating a juggernaut, no less.
Yes, I took out the number 1 seed, our good buddy Ryan at Tram. For those of you in the app, it looks like I have a 9-point lead right now, so I have Jason Witten to go. He has no one left. So I think unless Sal's proposed 90-yard backwards run and a fumble happens, I think I'll be okay.
It's not like we haven't seen that in the NFL before.
Right.
Sometime back in the fifth, it did happen. But I would like to say, Kevin, I am surprised that your team rallied and played for you and did not quit on you, because you did try to trade most of your good players to me about 5 weeks ago. Yeah. So I figured those players would have been like, oh, really? This guy don't want us? And just sit down. But nope. McCoy came through for you today, and who else was big for you today and helping get you to the championship?
Andrew Luck, obviously a big guy on my team here. Larry Fitzgerald had a down day, but he's been a solid performer all year. Really, I think one of the things that's gonna mark my season was the pickup of Taylor Gabriel. Really good pickup for me at the end of the year.
Bitch.
Yeah, sorry, Sal. I know that hurts a little, but that's really kind of what turned my team around. And Kristen Michael today is really probably the biggest surprise for why I'll be in the championship. He gets the 40-yard touchdown run, pretty much caps off his entire day, but it was enough. So.
That is amazing. After everything that me and Kristen Michael went through last year, now this year, the fact that he is on your falafel roster in the championship game, that is ironic.
So wait a second now, Kevin. You started Kristen Michael today?
I did. Yes.
I will like to say, I didn't know you started him today. Excellent move by you. He broke off a big run. That a few weeks back, when he was cut, I wrote a tweet that said, to don't drop him or add him. He will get signed by someone. He was a good player in the league this year. And I had at least one person reach out to me and tell me he was irrelevant and he would not do anything. And here we are right on a Falafel podcast. He helped win you a semifinal playoff. So
very true.
Booyah!
Yeah, and I mean, I think the point back then was, if you're looking at a regular team, a 12-team league, or anything along those lines, and for as far as size, he probably wouldn't be relevant. But in a 16-team league, there's definitely a shortage of running backs, and he's the type of guy you grab and you pick up. So, and he did. He worked for me today. So.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about Kristen Michael, I guess we should just start with this game and talk about the Packers, who were actually the only NFC North team to win today, which I guess is a little bit of a spoiler alert since this is the first game that we are talking about.
I'm pretty sure people watch these games.
Wow. Sometimes they don't. That's why we're here, Sal. Come on.
That is why we're
here. Where am I?
Your mom's basement. Still your mom's basement.
That's right. 82nd time in a row. All right. Chicago Bears. The Packers beat the Chicago Bears 30-27, basically on a huge bomb to Jordy Nelson late in the game that set up that game-winning field goal. This is an example of why you do not let weather reports fool you, as there was fantasy goodness basically all around here. You can take your pick. Jordy Nelson, like I mentioned, 7 catches for 124 yards. Alshon Jeffrey, he had a good game in his first game back from his PED suspension. He has 6 catches for over 80 yards and a touchdown. Ty Montgomery has a great day with 16 rushes for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Jordan Howard, he totals over 100 yards again and finds the end zone. So, Kev, we will start with you. Like, this game was fantasy goodness all the way around. What else are you taking away here?
Alshon Jeffrey, man. That's I got a lot of flack for my love of Alshon Jeffrey this week. Not that you guys were very too far down on him. Just that, I was really high on him. I had him in a top 10 play. And he may or may not turn out to be a top 10 play this week. I'm not sure where he's sitting currently. He's probably up there at least. But, at the end of the day, he had 3 games left coming off the suspension to show that he's a talented enough wide receiver to get a contract in the offseason, whether it's whether he can be franchised or not, or he goes somewhere else and gets a big contract. He has to show that he's a prime number 1 receiver, and I think he did that today, and I think he's going to continue to do that going forward because he has to. He really has to in order to cash in. So he's going to be motivated, very motivated to play. And on top of that, the Chicago Bears team is not that bad. They really aren't. They've played well. They're in every single game. I think Sal's talked about that a bunch. They're a good team that isn't good enough to win, which is interesting. But, for me, I think that there is fantasy goodness here. Obviously, Jordan Howard and Alshon Jeffrey are going to be relevant going forward. I think Matt Barkley in 2 quarterback leagues has shown that he can be relevant from time to time, too. He did throw 3 interceptions, but with the 2 touchdowns and the 360 yards here, I mean, it is more of a sign of how bad the Packers are as opposed, in the secondary as opposed to how good Matt Barkley is, but he is serviceable. And I will say this, Sal's other guy, Cameron Meredith, who I think we talked about as Sal should have started, but relevant again. 9 receptions, 104 yards, 13 targets, led the way with the targets there. So that was interesting to me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see next year if Meredith becomes a more involved piece on this team. With Jeffrey being a free agent, does he sign back? And just overall, where do the Bears go next year? So Jeffrey right now he sits at number 5, Kevin, in FLAFFL scoring for wide receivers on the week. So I would say with only 2 games left to go, he will likely be a top 10 for the week. Jordan Howard, I've continued to say you play this guy against every single team. Matchups don't scare me about him because he just gets it done every week, and he goes for 90 and a touchdown and adds another 23 through the air. I don't do a lot on Twitter on game day and stuff like that. We're more on the Fantasy Life app, which is like fantasy Twitter on steroids because it's nothing but it's nothing but fantasy, and it's question after question. It's repetitive. But I did put out about an hour before the game today that I thought Ty Montgomery was a solid flex play. I actually wrote that it could be like flex, it could be dump off city to him today, and he would go crazy. But this guy ran the ball tremendously. He ran for over 163 yards, 62 yards, as Steve pointed out, and 2 touchdowns. And this is a guy that he's going to be in my flex next week in championships if I have him because it just looks great. I mean, he stepped right in. It looks like he was a running back his whole life. So, other than that, we've covered all the good guys in this game. Nothing else that you're going to find that would help you for next week. Oh, we didn't say anything about Jared Cook, actually. Jared Cook had his best game of the season, 6 receptions for 85 yards. So, I don't know that you definitely trusted him for next week, but if you did have him in there and you plugged him in, or if you used him in DFS today, like I did, that was really, really good call.
Yeah, Jared Cook, he had a good game earlier this year, and I picked him up in a few spots and plugged him in, and he instantly fizzled. And so I would just be a little hesitant unless you're in a desperate spot. Championship game, there might be better options out there. But like Sal said, we covered all of the fantasy goodness here. We are going to move on. Poor Cleveland. They lose again, this time to the Buffalo Bills. That's right. It's so sad. They lose in Buffalo 33-13. LaShawn McCoy, he has a great game as you'd expect. He has 169 total yards to go along with his 2 touchdowns.
Also that was my FLAFFL team.
Yes, he was. He's been there all year. He's been good, damn good. That was even with Mike Gillisley sniping a touchdown from him. And for the Browns, nothing really here of fantasy value. But I think the biggest story from this one is going to be the disappearance of Sammy Watkins. He only has 1 catch for 10 yards as the running game was in full effect here. Sal, what do you think happened with Sammy Watkins?
I think that running game took over. It's and they used Charles Clay a ton. 7 receptions, 72 yards and a touchdown. And I was high on Watkins. Every single one of us had him ranked 14th this week. So exact same spot. And I think that fantasy-wide, a lot of people were high on him. So we miss him sometimes. We make bad calls. But I don't think, being as this was the thought process throughout all fantasy, it happens. LaShawn McCoy, what else can you say? I think people were really bummed out when Gillisley got that first touchdown. That was evident on the app, some of the lovely language that came in after that happened. But McCoy, we've said it a dozen or more times, he can take it to the house from anywhere on the field, and he just breaks amazing plays. Tyrod Taylor had a good game, 15.9, but you want a 20-point spot out of your quarterback. I mean, if you got a stacked roster and you throw a guy in there like that. So this was what I was worried about. I had said in other good matchups that he's had throughout the year, he just does not come out and put up those games for you. And he only had 174 passing and 1 touchdown. He did add 49 on the ground. That would get you almost an additional 5 points, but not the game you were hoping to get for against Cleveland, who gives up the most points to fantasy quarterbacks. Over on the Cleveland side, another guy that we were hoping to see have a good game today was Isaiah Crowell, or possibly expecting it. That did not happen. He had 8 carries for 28 yards, and if you threw him in there, he possibly cost you a game today. Duke Johnson had a decent game because he caught the ball 5 times for 62 yards, a couple of 31 rushing yards, and Robert Griffin Jr., he got a rushing touchdown, but essentially, if you started him, I mean, he got an 18.6, so that was actually better than Tyrod Taylor. So if you started him over Taylor, you're happy. But I think what we saw in this team a few weeks back is evident you don't want to start anybody here. Terrell Pryor doesn't appear to be an option. I mean, he might be a good player going forward. He might be a good keeper if you got him in the late round and pick him up off of waivers. But right now, things are so bad in Cleveland. And Corey Coleman's another guy right now. To me, he's keeper league worthy. But other than that, none of these guys are getting into my lineup.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know how you can. Where do they go? Right? I mean, they have to find a quarterback. That's about the number one thing, obviously. But what do they do then? They're still an 0-14 team. I mean, I don't know the quarterback really changes this unless you're bringing in a guy, one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and that certainly isn't happening. So, we talked about it a little bit, them trading for Jimmy Garoppolo. But even if they do that, do you see a whole lot of wins going their way? I mean, I don't think he turns them from a 0 possibly 16 team to a playoff team. So
I don't know. Have you seen Garoppolo play?
I have.
He's like 8 wins right there.
I told you, second best quarterback in the NFC East. But you
guys are both joking, though, right? You really think
yes.
You don't really think Garoppolo could go there and win, right?
No. I mean, look, I do think they have a lot of draft picks, so they are going to rebuild and hopefully rebuild quickly. But I do, Sal, to your point, Corey Coleman, Terrell Pryor, these are guys I'd be concerned about going forward from a keeper standpoint, just because it's going to be a couple of years before I think they're really very good. Maybe Terrell Pryor ends up somewhere else, but we'll see. I think your point on Tyrod Taylor and Robert Griffin, for that matter, is correct. But these are the guys that we talked about earlier in the year too. Around the draft time, is you can draft a guy late, so hopefully you're not depending on them for those 20-point games. And at least with Tyrod Taylor, he keeps that floor pretty high, right? I mean, he doesn't throw a lot of picks. He's pretty safe with the football in most games. He'll get you the 18 or 15 to 20 points. He's not going much over that, but he's not going much lower than that either. So I think he is a safe guy if you built your roster around not depending on the quarterback.
He's a QB with one of the higher floors, but one of the lower ceilings as well, just because he doesn't ever, there have been very rare games where he's just going off throwing for 300 yards. So, all right, we are going to move on. We move and talk about the Ravens hanging on to beat the Eagles, who rally late but fall short 27-26 after trying to go for it late in the game. Everyone was scared off of Ryan Matthews this week because of the matchup against Baltimore, but he comes through with those, for those who have the testicular fortitude to put them into their lineup. He has over 130 total yards and a touchdown. And then just when it looks like Kenneth Dixon has overtaken Terrence West in the Ravens backfield, he says not so fast, and he leads the Ravens backfield in touches 17-9 and totals 122 yards. So I give up. I have no idea what the Ravens are going to be doing week to week in that backfield. Kev, what do you think about that?
I hate it. I hate it. It was finally Kenneth Dixon's turn. It was finally his turn. You could finally count on it a little bit, and then they go and screw it all up again. And actually, Terrence West looked pretty good in this game too. So, I mean, he did have the 141-yard run, which kind of made it look a lot better than it was, but it still was pretty decent as far as a runner. I hate it because I don't think you have any clarity. I don't think Dixon does get you the touchdown, but he only rushes 9 times for 36 yards. So I don't know. They were up in this game, through most of the first quarter and then into the second half and things like that. So it wasn't until towards the end of the game that Philly kind of came back a little bit. So you would have thought more rushing attempts for Kenneth Dixon, things like that. But he really made his hay last week in the check down category, and he just didn't get a lot of those targets this week that he did last week. So for whatever reason, they were playing a different style of offense this game. I thought it was interesting. We had a lot of questions, or at least I saw. I don't know about you guys, but I saw a lot of questions this morning about Joe Flacco. People asking if they should start Joe Flacco over guys like Tom Brady. Like, I get it.
I think it was because Sal is always talking about how much he enjoys starting Joe Flacco.
Yeah, well, first of all, to you. And I saw a bunch of those, and we do get those every single week. Don't start Joe Flacco. Don't start him.
No, don't start Joe Flacco. He's not worth it. Look, he's 206 and 2 touchdowns with an interception. Great. If that's what you want, fine.
12.1 points, Kevin.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah, he's just not going to get – he's never – he has the 4 touchdown games once a year. You missed it already, so don't start him for the rest of the season. On the other side of the ball, hey, Ryan Matthews plays football still. Did you guys know that?
I was aware that he was around.
Doug Peterson told me he doesn't play anymore.
No.
I believe Doug Peterson.
Yeah, no, he does. He rushed 20 times for 128 yards and a touchdown today, which is weird because you kind of wonder if maybe they gave him 20 carries every game earlier in the season, if maybe he could do that.
That backfield was so poorly mishandled this year.
It's got to be one of the worst of all time.
How many times did that guy start off the first quarter literally putting 11 fantasy points up, never to see a touch again the rest of the game? And I know it's not about fantasy and it's about the NFL, but he could have helped your team win. The guy was a good running back for that team last year. I just don't get it. I know he's got the nagging injuries and he missed some time this year, but the guy goes in there and he succeeds if you give him. Running backs sometimes need some carries to get themselves going in the game. I didn't understand the way he foobarred that all season.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Sal. There are some guys in the NFL that need 20 carries to be effective. And you got to just let them push through and keep running with it and keep pounding the rock, and then eventually they get there. But, Byron Marshall looked decent in this game, too, as far as a receiver out of the backfield a little bit. Only 2 catches, 6 yards. But it looked like he picked up the offense pretty well. So I'm sure Peterson will give him 25 carries next week. And then Zach Ertz, I think, is the other guy on this team that you can actually trust because he seems to be getting a lot of targets, and he does pretty well with them. 6 catches for 80 yards on this one. So on Philadelphia, I think that's it. I really still, going into a championship game, I don't think I can trust Ryan Matthews. I don't think I can trust any of the running backs. I think it's probably Zach Ertz. You might be throwing Jordan Matthews in there, who gets you at least 6 catches, even though it's only for 27 yards. You might throw him in there, but that's about it from that side of the ball.
Those are Dennis Pitta numbers.
Yeah.
6 for 27.
That's right. Not everyone,
Sal, you got anything
not everyone
to
can
add
do
to
that.
this one?
I was actually going to say that I liked Jordan Matthews this week, and he made me look like a poop head. So I don't know. I'm not a fan, Jordan. No, not much to add except for I hope you didn't have to start Carson Wentz. He did get a rushing touchdown, but he finished with a rushing touchdown, which is worth 6 points. The guy finished with 11.6 today in the FLAFFL scoring. And as a guy people were high on at the beginning of the year, and they think he's going to be a future NFL star. But neither one of these quarterbacks are guys that are going to lead you to fantasy championships. So keep them on your bench. And I think Kevin pretty much covered everything else. The only thing I'll say is, Steve Smith, I think that we're seeing the last few games of Steve Smith, and he's one for the ages. I mean, this guy, I believe that he left the game with a shoulder injury, and the next time they showed him, he was breaking off a big touchdown run and and getting up and celebrating. So they do not make guys like that anymore.
Yeah, soak it in, because he's definitely not going to be around for long. All right, we're going to move on. The Titans come from behind and beat the Chiefs on a last-second 53-yard field goal as time expires to win an Arrowhead 19-17. This, of course, is after they went for it for 2 and did not get it. And we were talking about this before the podcast. Don't know what really they were thinking about there. But Derrick Henry, he was the star here as he rushed 9 times for 58 yards and gets the 2 touchdowns. But DeMarco Murray did do all the work there. He gets 141 total yards, but the passing game did not amount to much as Mariota spread around 240 yards with no touchdowns and 1 interception. For the Chiefs, there were pretty solid options here all around. Spencer Ware totaled 95 yards. Tyreek Hill had 1 touch this game, but it went for 60 yards and a touchdown. And Jeremy Maclin, he had a nice game for, I guess, the only time this season. He catches 6 to 7 targets for 82 yards. And Travis Kelce finally has a lackluster game. He only has 41 yards on a few catches. So, Sal, what are you taking from this Titans-Kansas City game?
That Jeremy Maclin game worries me for Tyreek Hill because if you look at Tyreek Hill, you see he had 12.8 in FLAFFL scoring. That was 1 touch for a 68-yard touchdown run. So he did not catch a single pass in this game. So a guy who's become a darling in the fantasy world, someone you've been able to more than trust over the last few weeks, that's a little worrisome because you cannot count on a 68-yard touchdown run from a wide receiver every week. So I'd really have to look at matchups next week and be worried that maybe Macklin's come back in and he's taken over again as the lead target getter outside of Kelce in that offense. I'd like to thank Tennessee for screwing me all year on Derrick Henry. I had him in FLAFFL just waiting for when they were going to share the touches, and they did it a week after I was eliminated from the playoffs. Spencer Ware is a guy, obviously we know much earlier in the season I talked about a ton and saying hold on to him even if you didn't have Jamal Charles, that he would be the guy. Turned out he became the guy, but he's an RB2. He's not getting you the games that I thought he would get you. He was 4th and 1 from the 1 yard line today, just absolutely stonewalled and rejected. That would have changed the whole dynamic of his day if he gets it on that. But he's not finishing. He's definitely just not finishing. So I'd be starting as an RB2 next week, but I'd also be looking at my other options. And this is a game of another quarterback that you don't want to start on a weekly basis. Alex Smith. There was a lot of Alex Smith over Tom Brady as well today, Kevin. So Tom Brady did not have a great fantasy day. So to that point, he became a run-of-the-mill guy. But still, you don't start guys like this over studs like that. So other than that, Rishard Matthews had a nice game. If he didn't fumble, he would have had a better game. But other than that.
Kev, anything else to add?
Yeah, I would like to start off by just thanking Derrick Henry for vulturing the 2 touchdowns from DeMarco Murray.
That helped you very much.
Helped propel me into the FLAFFL championship, so I do appreciate that. Look, Sal, I guess I would ask you, because you've been kind of in on that this whole season. Does that worry you for DeMarco Murray owners who maybe survived this and go through to the championship?
Yeah, it would worry me, because they did say a few weeks back when they were on that bye, remember they had that week 13 bye week, so just 2 weeks ago, they did mention that they were going to limit the short yardage touches for Murray and get Henry more involved. We did not see it as much last week, but we did see it plenty today. He had 9 carries total, and again, he got 2 short yardage touchdowns. So that does worry me. Murray still got plenty of volume, 18 carries, 89 yards, and he still caught 5 passes for 52. So he puts up a 16.6 day, but you add those 2 touchdowns, it's a nearly 30-point day and a monster day that would carry you to a championship.
For sure, and I will say this, I agree with you on Spencer Ware. He's very Frank Gore-like.
So. Yes, he's become very, very reliable for a high floors or a solid floor as far as running backs go, but doesn't seem to have that extra oomph to really break loose every week like you'd like. Anything else here?
That'll do it.
That will do. All right, then we move on. The Steelers keep on rolling as they go into Cincy and beat the Bengals 24-20. The MVP of this game is Pittsburgh kicker Chris Boswell. He scores 6 field goals, getting you 23 fantasy points this week. That is pretty big. Le'Veon Bell, he racks up 130 yards but does not have a touchdown. Eli Rogers scores the only touchdown for the Steelers this week. Antonio Brown has a pretty quiet day. Could have been a lot better if the Steelers were not called for a holding penalty on a play where he ended up scoring a touchdown. And for the Bengals, Jeremy Hill scores, but he does get hurt, and that leaves the door open for Rex Burkhead to come in and get a little bit of work. All the pass catchers really have a pretty rough day aside from Brandon LaFell, but no one's going to be really starting him, because no one likes him. I don't like Brandon LaFell. So other than that, it was pretty lackluster fantasy day here when some people probably were expecting some points. Kev, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, definitely a boring game as far as from a fantasy perspective, not a lot going on. I mean, the only reason that Le'Veon Bell is even relevant in this game is because he's just such a yardage monster, 130 total yards, like you said. So he's just such a good runner. Couldn't get in the end zone, though, and that really hurts his day from a points perspective. And then, I thought Ladarius Green had a decent day, 5 catches, 72 yards on 8 targets. So he was in the passing game a lot. That's good for fantasy players who've been using him or streaming tight ends or doing whatever, because, it kind of makes him, you like to see that out of him. I believe they play at home next week, which is obviously much better for their offense in general. So hopefully that will lead to bigger things for all of these guys. Sammy Coates was actually targeted in this one. I thought that was interesting. I don't know that he's relevant to fantasy in a championship week, but it was interesting to see him get a target and actually a couple of carries as well. Slow day for the offense in Pittsburgh, but I think they'll pick it back up next week. So I think you're okay going forward with your Ben Roethlisberger's, your Le'Veon Bell, and your Antonio Brown's next week, and even Ladarius Green I think is a decent streaming option there. On the other side of the ball, I think you're pretty much waiting to see what happens with AJ Green this week, and even that, it's going to be tough to play him, with a team that's basically, I think they were officially eliminated today, and they're not going to have a lot to play for. It sounds like he's coming back, but I think you're going to struggle to use him because, you're probably going to have to. I don't know. What would you guys do in a championship? Would you throw him in there?
Here's what I would say. C. Adrian Peterson.
Ha.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Different kind of injury, but and different team.
Poppycock.
Whole different scenario. In fact, Minnesota hasn't been able to run the ball all season. They have a terrible offensive line. It's not like AJ Green struggled before his injury.
I second my poppycock to you, sir.
Fair enough. Look, I think it depends on your options and what you got out there. If you made it to the championship despite not having him, you probably have some good options to throw in there. So it's certainly something you want to consider. But I might take a look at throwing him in a flex something if you have him. Tyler Eifert really quiet in this one. That probably killed a lot of people. And I think a lot of people will be angry with Tyler Eifert. I'm
not happy with him.
Yeah. That's about it. I don't think Jeremy Hill. I think he leads the league in leaving the game injured and coming back. But that's about it.
Yeah.
Sal, anything else?
I got a text this morning from a friend of mine that asked me, Eifert, Ertz, or Bennett at tight end, and I proclaimed Eifert was my top-rated
Wow, can't even say it.
Top-rated tight end for this week, and he really crapped the bed for me and for fantasy owners. And I think if you look at this game specifically, but across the NFL today, a lot of the top fantasy guys that helped get you to where you were into the semifinal did not step up for you today. If you're going on to next week, not getting a good day out of Bell and not getting a good day out of Antonio Brown. Bell still had a serviceable day. Out of Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger and Tyler Eifert, then you got to consider yourself lucky. And much like Kevin said, I would not shy away from those guys if we get through to next week. But a lot of people went home today because a lot of studs did not perform.
All right, I'm going to move on because we are already falling behind. In one of the slower games of the day, the Giants dominate the Lions, and their defense really coming through this last half of the year. If I were a Patriots fan, I'd be shaking in my boots already. They win 17-6. You get touchdowns from OBJ and my binky Sterling Shepard, but that was about it. Eli didn't look great again today. The running game non-existent for both teams. Golden Tate, he goes over 100 yards on 8 catches. And that was basically all of the offense for the Lions. They could not get anything going. Sal, do you think this had a lot to do with Matthew Stafford and that middle finger injury of his?
No, I think it had more to do with the Giants' defense. And Giants' defense have been playing really well for a while now. And they shut them down. They made big plays in the secondary again. And they recovered a big fumble by Zach Zenner when the Lions were going in. So that one legitimately has nothing to do with Stafford at all. So this has been a very opportune defense lately, and they've been playing really well. Odell Beckham Jr., he makes it hard to like him, but the guy performs. He really does perform well. And, another one-handed catch that he took into the end zone in this game. We said that on the preview show, Steve. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to that one that Kevin and I did, that there is no running game on these two teams, so it was going to come on the backs of the quarterbacks, and I guess it was really decided by the wide receivers. Golden Tate has a decent day. He has 16.2 scoring in FLAFFL, and that was 122 yards on 8 receptions. And then outside of that, there's really not a whole lot that came off the Detroit offense. And I would think that the Giants at this point should turn the ball over to Perkins and stop with this Jennings crap, because Perkins just looks better, fresher, and younger. And I think that they are doing themselves a disservice at this point, because I think he could help liven that offense up and absolutely liven up that running game.
I completely agree there, Sal. I think Perkins is the better back at this point in his career, their respective careers there. And I think he wrestles 11 times for 56 yards and a 5.1 average, and then he loses 18 touches to Rashad Jennings, who can only muster 38 yards. So I think you're right. I think they got to make the switch. I got to imagine it's has to do with pass protection and things like that. You typically hear about the rookies, but it makes no sense that they're not going to him for any other reason. They definitely need to inject some kind of youth into their lineup to get this team going, because the offense definitely looks stagnant. It doesn't look good. Both sides of the ball here were pretty terrible. I thought it was interesting that Beckham had a return punt too that got called back for a penalty. I don't know if you guys saw that.
That was rough. It was a nice return too.
It was a great return. He did a lot of work to get himself free and then run up the sideline, and then only to have it called back. But could have been a huge day for him. For those of you who have return yards too. So overall, I think Sal summarized it pretty good. There's not a whole lot here. From going forward into your fantasy championships, you're starting Beckham. You're probably going to flex Shepard, and I don't know that you can trust the running backs unless you're in a deeper league. I'd probably lean towards Perkins next week, but I don't know. It looks like Jennings is still going to get the majority of the work on the other side of the ball. You're going to start Golden Tate. God help you if you're starting Marvin Jones, and these two quarterbacks are quarterbacks you're probably. A lot of teams probably have both of them on their roster and are picking between the two. So good luck to you.
Yeah, most of my rosters, almost all of my rosters had those two guys on it. So.
And those teams are where?
So yeah, what's the game's up next, Steve?
All right, we move on. This has got to be one of the biggest surprises today, as the Colts go into Minnesota and just crush the Vikings 34-6. Andrew Luck has a very solid day passing with 250 yards and 2 touchdowns with no turnovers. T.Y. Hilton, he was held to 3 catches and 45 yards with no Dante Moncrief out, so that was disappointing. But luckily everyone started Philip Dorsett, right? He has a long touchdown, and Robert Turman, he scores 2 touchdowns, I believe. It probably made somebody in Sal's 32-team league very, very happy today.
Woohoo!
And I hope you did not get sucked in and start Adrian Peterson like Sal alluded to a few minutes ago. He totals 23 yards and has 1 fumble. So in typical scoring, that would lead you to get 0.1 point. Kyle Rudolph, he has a pretty solid day, as he's been solid all season, but otherwise this game was really forgettable on Minnesota's side of the ball. Kev, did you take anything away from this one at all?
Yeah, I'm the jerk who got sucked in and started Adrian Peterson, by the way. I did it in one league. I just, whatever. I took a chance. It was a gut call the last second. I think I had an extra I had Jason Witten playing in my extra flex, so I swapped those 2 out. So we'll see what happens there. I'm sure
Kev, I don't want to cut you completely off, but I want to give you credit and props, because we've discussed that on this show more than once, and you said you would do it, and you did it. So
yeah,
props to you for owning up to it that you did that.
Yeah, I stick to my word. It did hurt me, but I did. Look, and again, it comes down to it was between him and Jason Witten. In a league, it's a semifinals match. Neither of those guys are carrying this match for me. Both of them are bonus points, to be quite honest with you. I have other guys on that particular roster that would really carry the team. So that's why I went with it. I thought my logic was more based on he could fall into the end zone for a touchdown because he's Adrian Peterson, and they'll give him the goal line carries. So, overall, he didn't look great. Not a good day for them in general. They had to abandon the run pretty early anyway, because they were down by 27 points at the half. So not a good day for their rushing attack to begin with. And I think on Minnesota, as far as going forward, you're really only trusting Kyle Rudolph at this point, who has 8 catches for 97 yards. Stephon Diggs is a guy that I think we all think is a wide receiver too, but he can throw out a clunker like this at any point, especially against a defense like the Colts, who you think he could just, they should get some pretty good production out of. So I'd have trouble trusting any of these Minnesota players going forward besides Rudolph, like I said. With Indianapolis, I mean, Andrew Luck's great. I think he should have a good couple of matchups. So hopefully you're using him in your championship. And Frank Gore is Frank Gore. 26 carries, 100 yards. He's an RB2, right? So it's what he does. He's great at it, and he's very, very high floor. Not really a high ceiling either, but that's what you get out of him. And Moncrief being inactive certainly hurt. I think T.Y. Hilton probably hurt a lot of people with the 3 for 45, but I wouldn't be worried about it going forward. So I think those are the guys from the Colts you're going to start again next week. You're going to roll them out. So
roll them out. Sal, anything else?
Yeah, I think that same guy who asked me the question before about the tight ends, he reached out to me today and he asked me T.Y. Hilton or Kyle Rudolph. Now, I mean, come on. What are you going to say when somebody asks you a question like that, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, I said T.Y. Hilton. And in this game, you see Rudolph had 8 for 97 and Hilton had 3 for 45. It looked good early. I mean, Hilton had like 42 of those yards on his first 2 receptions. And I thought that he'd be off and running. But, yeah, other than that, I thought I had a point to make about this game, but then when I look at the stats, I don't see a whole lot of points to make. I mean, the two guys that caught touchdowns here are Swoop and Dorsett. So I doubt that they were in anybody's lineups unless you guys say like my 32 team lineup. But probably the only guy sitting around more pissed off than Adrian Peterson owners is Matt Asiata. He's probably like, hey, listen, you gave me the ball once today. I caught it and ran for 20 yards, and I've been better than the other two. Play me, damn it.
Yep, I would agree there. But we don't have time to talk about those hapless Vikings anymore. We are moving on, and we're going to talk about the Jaguars and the Texans. The Texans, led by Tom Savage, he makes a comeback to beat the Jaguars 21-20, leading to the firing of Gus Bradley today as the coach of the Jaguars. He is no longer with the team because he's the one that throws all those losing interceptions week in and week out. This game sucked. I got nothing to really talk about here.
I think he signed Osweiler, right? Directly? He was the one?
He's for the Jaguars? What are you talking about here?
Oh, yeah.
It's sarcasm.
I'm sorry. Yeah. It is sarcasm. And I'm talking about the wrong team anyway. He drafted Bortles, right? Yeah.
I don't know if he drafted, but I can't remember off the top of my head or not. But he hasn't helped Bortles, that's for sure. They have not helped each other, so their relationship is over.
It's possible that they'll be working in the same job next year.
McDonald's?
Yeah. I wasn't going to say McDonald's, but, somewhere not in the NFL.
Working at the same car lot.
Yeah.
Well, to the point that you guys have made multiple times about benching Bortles, he stuck with them. And, so in the end, that was his downfall because you only have to look across the field to see very early in the game, Houston saw that they needed this win, and they sat ass washer down on his ass because he was atrocious, drew 2 interceptions early, and Savage came in, and he played like one. I mean, he really led the team well.
The wordplay tonight is just phenomenal.
I'm all over it, Kevin. At one point in the game, it looked like Hakeem Hunt and Tom Savage were the two guys that were going to lead the team, but that Hunt ended up fumbling that touchdown, and Miller got stymied on the next one. But Miller took over after that and ended up having a pretty decent to nice game. And I don't know if it was me that was going to talk, but I kind of took over. So, Steve, who were you going to throw it to?
I'm just going to throw it to Kev.
Oh,
so
Kev.
Good job. Good job there. No, I was going to throw it to you, Sal. So go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, you were. So a guy we talked about, but I doubt anybody had him in their lineup this week, was Griffin, the tight end, because of if CJ Fancy Hat / Fedorowicz was not going to be able to play, and he didn't. And he had a pretty nice game, 8 receptions for 85 yards, which in FLAFFL scoring would have given you 12.5.
12.5. I only know that because Gio started him against me. So
nice.
That was awesome.
Nice.
Good going, Gio. That was a solid move there, buddy.
DeAndre Hopkins looked a little bit better. Looked like he came back to life a little bit with Savage. So I would imagine Savage is going to probably start the last 2 games of the season. Don't know that he's the solution for next year, but it's going to be very interesting to see if Osweiler is back next year, because I believe they did have something written into the contract where they could get out of it without losing a ton of money. So he has performed about as bad as anyone has ever performed, getting a contract that size, being brought in as what was supposed to be a franchise quarterback. I mean, what can you say about the Jaguars? 92 yards for Bortles, 44 for Ivory, 28 for Yeldon, 26 for Walters, 15 for Robinson. Stop me when it sounds like a decent day out of anybody. Most guys in the NFL got down on one play today. These guys couldn't get it in a game. So there's nothing I want to talk about on the Jacksonville side.
I think it's unfair that the Jaguars don't get to play the Browns. Like, I want to see that game. I want to see how bad that game is.
You don't want to see that game.
You know who it's unfair to? It's unfair to the 49ers, who have no shot at getting the number one pick and only having won one game this year.
It's very true. It's very true. Yeah, there's just nothing on that side. If you started Blake Bortles, thank you, Ryan. You probably didn't win. It's just a fact because Blake Bortles is awful. He kills fantasy players. Look, we talked about at the beginning of the season about the regression. I don't think any of us expected him to throw for 92 yards and a 3.3 yards per reception average. 3.3. Chris Ivory ran for more yards per carry than Blake Bortles threw for yards today. That's
not good.
That's just not good.
Here's the best stat. He had a rushing touchdown. He ended up with -5 rushing yards.
Wow. So anyway, I don't think there's anything good on this. You're not starting any of these guys going forward if you're in the championship somehow with any of them. Lamar Miller is the only one in this game I think you're really probably going to start. DeAndre Hopkins, I guess you can roll out there because you've been doing it all season and somehow you've won. So going into your championship, that's probably the best you're going to do. But other than that, I really don't think there is much to talk about. These teams we'll be talking about in the offseason because I think they're both in for a lot of moves. But for now, good luck to you if you're using them.
Yep, and DeAndre Hopkins, he actually ended the game with 17 targets. So if that's what the future looks like with Tom Savage, then sign me up. I'll take it.
That's some volume.
Yes, it is. All right, we're going to move into the afternoon games. The Saints finally right the ship in Arizona and beat up the Cardinals. They win 48-41. Drew Brees and Brandon Cooks apologize to all fantasy owners for the last 2 weeks in this game. Brees has almost 400 yards passing and 4 touchdowns with a fumble. Cooks finishes with 7 catches for 186 yards and 2 touchdowns, 34.1 points in FLAFFL scoring. Michael Thomas, he scores a touchdown. Tim Hightower actually scores 2 touchdowns, much to the anger of Mark Ingram owners. For the Cardinals, David Johnson.
How about Mark Ingram himself? Did you see how angry he was?
Oh, he was pissed. He was so pissed. It was awesome. He was yelling at Sean Payton. It was great. For the Cardinals, David Johnson, he does what we all thought he would do. He goes off after having a quote-unquote average day last week by his standards. He has 108 total yards and scores 2 times in this game. So, Sal, what are you taking away from this one?
Well, J.J. Nelson was the guy that was a lot of talk about. Would you play him again this week? I wasn't big on him. He ended up dropping a walk-in touchdown. I don't know if you guys saw that.
That was bad.
5 for 38 and a touchdown. He ends up with 12.3, but he could have had another.
That was like a 60-yarder too.
Oh, it was a deep one. It would have, like you're saying, it would have doubled the points he had for the game, and it was walk in, right in his breadbasket, and eventually on the floor. On the app today, I was tagged in a question, and the question was: need 2 out of these 3, Brandon Cooks, Ty Montgomery, and Kenneth Dixon. And I'm very happy to say I told the gentleman to go with Cooks and Montgomery. And not only did he win his fantasy championship, but the guy got a job offer today. So how much better of a day could that guy have had? So
that's fantastic.
He wrote back letting me know how excited he was. What a great day.
I don't know. I'm skeptical of people who make job offers on a Sunday. Just going to throw that out there.
Listen, wow. I don't care what day. If it's a good job and you're offering it to me on a Sunday at midnight, I'll take it.
Even you're pushing me more into the skepticism at midnight.
Carson,
the guy's got a job. Just be happy for him, man.
I'm happy for the guy.
It's ADO and then a bunch of numbers after it I can't remember. So that's the user's name. So Carson Palmer had a nice day. If you had the trust in him to put him in there in Week 15, that was coincidentally the choice that Ryan had against Kevin, and I was surprised to see that he went with Bortles. That would have been a big difference because Palmer had a 20.7 day, and right now that would put him in a lead over you with just Witten to go. So, Ryan, I love you, buddy. A couple of bad choices there, and your running backs didn't carry you this week, unfortunately. But I digress. Who's this guy?
We got a time limit here.
Oh, time limit. All right, Kevin, go ahead. You take over.
Look, I think I did start J.J. Nelson in another league. I thought it was pretty, I thought without Floyd and with Brown still dinged up and on a kind of a pitch count, you sort of expected him to get a little more targets. He get 11 targets in this game, Sal, so that definitely relevant. Jermaine Gresham still continues to be on the flex range for tight ends. He only has 3 for 42 in this one, but another 5 targets, so he's being used quite a bit. Larry Fitzgerald does what Larry Fitzgerald does, which is 7 catches, 57 yards, no touchdown this time, 9 targets. So he's pretty consistent with what he's been doing all season. Started off the season real hot with touchdowns, and then, the last few games, this is kind of what you're getting out of him, but I think that's what you should expect. On the other side of the ball, how many people asked you about Drew Brees questions like, oh my God, he's going to do it again. It's away from the dome. I think you can safely start him in any dome. I don't think it just has to be at home. I think it can be any dome. He's going to throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think that's just the way it's going to be.
I think that was probably the most asked question on the app today was Drew Brees questions. And Caveman, FLAFFL, he's a FLAFFL Junior participant, I believe.
Embryo.
He's an embryo participant and a guy who's in the chat every day giving out solid advice. He had a promoted poll today on the app, so it was the number one thing at the top of the app all day, and that poll was, which QB do I start in a 6-point touchdown league? And it was Drew Brees and Tyrod Taylor. And I could tell you that it ended up 60-40 in favor of Brees, but I think there were a lot of late votes. It happens sometimes. People do this. It was much closer, and at one point I saw Taylor in the lead. You don't do stuff like that, you people. I mean, it's crazy. I told every single person who asked today, somebody against Brees, I told them Brees, and hopefully they think about me tonight because I have no championships to play.
Whoa!
Wow, yeah, that's a little awkward.
Provocative.
Definitely provocative.
I'm a little lonely.
All right, I think that's it on this game, and let's quickly move along, Steve.
All right, I really thought that I'd seen the 49ers at their worst about a decade ago before the Harbaugh era, but this team just looks so absolutely clueless right now. It is amazing. They fly all the way across the country just to get stomped by Atlanta, 41-13. Devontae Freeman says, hey, now don't forget about me. He goes off for 155 total yards. He scores 3 touchdowns and 32.5 fantasy points in 0.5 PPR scoring. Matt Ryan throws for 286 and 2 touchdowns, one to Taylor Gabriel, the other to Austin Hooper. So one helps a lot of people and the other one helps nobody. For San Francisco, Carlos Hyde, he continues to look really good. He only totals 77 yards and does fumble. But for a guy who has about a quarter and a half to get regular usage before his team has to abandon what he does the best, he's been pretty good for the last 5 weeks. So, Kev, what did you take from this game?
Yeah, I mean, this game was weird. You kind of figured it was going to be exactly, the score would be this. I didn't think Devontae Freeman was going to be as good as he was in this game, although I did think that he was going to rush for quite a bit. I had him pretty high in the rankings. I thought Tevin Coleman would be used a little bit more. It was so interesting to me that he gets 14 carries. He just wasn't as effective in the running game, and I thought that he would be used a lot more in the passing game, but he only gets 2 targets in this one. So that was interesting to me as far as the usage of the running backs, because you really just saw Freeman. I don't know if if there was any particular reason for that, but overall, I just expected it to be a little different. Matt Ryan has a good game in this one. Taylor Gabriel, as we mentioned before, obviously has a decent game here. I don't know who Aldrick Robinson is. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Who is Aldrick Robinson?
I'll tell you what. I was a click away from starting him in DraftKings today. I looked at it and I was like, I'm gonna hit it. He's $3,000, and I didn't.
He was a great play in DraftKings because he's very cheap, and obviously he had a pretty decent game last week too. Without Julio Jones, he's kind of filling that role. I guess there's a new A-Rob, right? I mean,
he's taking over.
He's currently the only one.
Yeah. So overall, though, I think going forward on the Atlanta side of the ball, you're going to start Matt Ryan, you're going to start Freeman, you're going to start Coleman. Hopefully Julio Jones comes back, and although again he's another guy after missing a couple games in your championship, you're going to start him. I don't think there's any question, but got to lower expectations and hope that maybe you have some other guys. Which, if you've made it to the finals without him, you hopefully do. So on the other side of the ball, I don't even think we need to talk about it.
I like it.
The only thing I'll say on the other side is that there was a lot of Kaepernick questions this week also. So if you did, well, if some people played him, he had a decent day. At 17.4, he probably did not kill your fantasy team. I did not recommend playing him, but he didn't kill his owners today. And I would say Matt Ryan, considering how many points they were up by that early, and owners probably getting nervous that he would be taken out a lot sooner than he was, has a nice day at 286 and 2 touchdowns. You know that if they had to play the string out, he probably could have added, gone over 300 yards and possibly gotten another touchdown. But Freeman getting those 3 rushing touchdowns hurt his value there. Gabriel's become so reliable right now as far as scoring touchdowns. He did only end up with 3 for 60 and that touchdown, but still,
6
that gives him a solid. Again. Yeah, it's right there. 5 or 6 a week, right? He ended up with 13.5 points in 0.5 PPR. And, congratulations on getting them, Kevin. Some of us weren't smart enough to do it, even when they talked themselves into it, and then talked themselves out of it.
Very, very sad, Sal. Very sad. So, to cheer you up, we're going to move on and talk about the Oakland Raiders going into what sounded like a home game for them in San Diego. And they beat the Chargers and clinch a playoff spot. So, why don't you...
Ooh, can I start? Can I start?
No, we're going to actually save you for the next game.
All right.
And this is going to be the gloating portion of the podcast. So go ahead, talk about how happy you are right now, Sal.
Well, I will first and foremost say I am extremely happy as an Oakland Raider fan. And to anybody out there in the Raiders Nation who listens to this, this is great. This is the reason why you stick with a team. After 14 years of not being in the playoffs, it's all that more sweeter when they get back in. You don't jump from team to team. My team sucks. And I've had people tell me that. You should follow somebody else. What do you mean follow somebody else? You follow your team. Now, they didn't make this easy today, and I was really nervous after the Chiefs lost in a 1 o'clock game. What an opportunity we had after losing to them twice this year to jump back and take control of our destiny and get back in the first place. And whatever, you win games like this, that proves that you're a good team. They did it on the road. Like Steve said, I heard that the tickets were so cheap that the Oakland Raider fans bought them up because they knew there was a chance they were going to clinch the playoffs today, and that absolutely was a home crowd just a little bit further up north. Are they north of Oakland or south of Oakland? Steve, you're in California. I'm not.
San Diego is very south of Oakland.
Oh, south of Oakland. Yes. Okay. I've never been past Texas, so I wouldn't be able to tell you these things. But, Michael Crabtree has a really
You didn't
nice
take
day.
geography in high school?
I took geography, but I didn't study where the cities were in the
Never
states,
looked at a map?
How about I come over there and look you in the face, poke you in the eyeballs? So, any hootie ha. Michael Crabtree had a really nice touchdown in this game that was originally called not a touchdown, and he tapped his toes in. And he really basically took control of the offense from Cooper these last few weeks. It's been more of Crabtree's show, and he's definitely somebody I'm more confident in. Cooper finishes with 1 for 28, hasn't gone over 50 some odd yards in a few weeks, and he's become very unreliable. Over on the other side with Phillip Rivers finishes up with 14.2 fantasy points. He threw another interception today. He did throw for a ton of yards, 206. He did have 2 touchdowns, but he's a guy who a lot of people around middle of the season, when they started making trades and adjusting their rosters for the playoff run, this was like the guy that everybody's like, oh my God, look at his playoff matchup. But he really has not performed well for his owners. He does finish with 14.2, which is, again, average. Not what you want in a fantasy semifinal from your quarterback. Kenneth Farrow is a guy who I think I had just outside of my RB2. So listed as a flex. He really did not take advantage of the opportunity he had. He did get 15 carries for 39 yards, but he had a huge fumble in this game. Essentially the fumble that cost the Chargers the game and won it for the Raiders. So very excited going forward to see how my Raiders do, since I have nothing to play for in fantasy.
Kev, anything else to add in this game?
No, real quick. We got a lot of questions about Farrow, and I think people were a little too excited. Guys who people who may have lost Melvin Gordon and thought that this guy was going to step right in and take over. He's not that guy. They did mix in Ronnie Hillman a lot, so if you were thinking maybe next week if Melvin Gordon's not back, again, don't roll this guy out there as anything more than a flex at best, because he's just not that guy, and this offense is not that great.
All right, well then we will move from one gloating host to another. New England goes into Denver, gets a huge win against my sinking Denver Broncos, who are not going to make the playoffs this season. The Pats win this one 16-3. Kev, go ahead and talk about how happy you are about your New England Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, they clinched the AFC East. They clinched the first-round bye, and they're in the driver's seat for the number 1 overall seed. It's a great win for them, because going into Denver, obviously, I know a lot of the TV outlets and other, media outlets had talked about Brady's struggles in going to Denver. I think he was 2-6 before this game, so it was a great win overall from a team perspective. Obviously, as a fan of the Patriots, it was great to see their defense play as well as it did against an offense that just doesn't really look like it's comfortable moving the ball. Simeon goes for 282 again, almost over. He was over 300 last week, but they just get down in the red zone, and it seems like they struggle a lot, and they just can't punch it in. New England's defense has played phenomenal the last couple of games. I think. I mean, not to say that Denver's offense is really a big juggernaut, as I'm sure you're aware, Steve. But
it's not. Juggernaut is you shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, that is not the right word for them. But to say, to hold any team in the NFL to 3 points, I think is still a pretty good accomplishment. And the Patriots defense is definitely doing a good job. As far as fantasy, value, that's a defense you might want going into, the rest of the going into the fantasy championships. So they've been active. They've definitely, they're getting sacks, they're getting turnovers. So overall, it's a great defense. Offensively, from a fantasy standpoint, this is a tough day for Brady. I mean, we talked about it, and I stick by saying that I'd start Brady over Flacco, but 188 yards for him in this one. He doesn't get any in the end zone. Not a good day overall. The Denver defense is definitely legit. It definitely makes takes the value of quarterbacks down, but at the same time, I think you still got to roll out your studs, and that's why I would have made that decision. Deion Lewis gets a lot of carry in this one, 18 carries, 95 yards. LeGarrette Blount gets 17 as well, and he gets the touchdown, so the day looks better for him. But overall, Edelman gets another 12 targets, which I think is incredible, but he does exactly what Edelman does, as we've talked about many times. You see 6 catches, 75 yards, no touchdowns. So that's what that guy is. He's going to be there every game for that. The other guys all come back down to earth, but I don't think it's something you have to worry about going forward, because I think they'll be fine next week. And on the other side of the ball, really not a whole lot offensively to be happy about. I think Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are guys that if you made it through this week with them, you'll start them again next week. But you just have to temper expectations. I don't think either one of them is going to be better than a wide receiver 2 for the rest of the season. And the running game is putrid. I don't think this is really much of a running game at all. So.
Yeah, it's crazy how the value of Devontae Booker is just absolutely plummeted since the time that he took over from C.J. Anderson and he had that big game, and how the hype was so high, how fast it has fallen for him. And Trevor Siemian, God, he looks terrible right now. He just does not look comfortable, and it's
comes
very,
Tony
very
Romo. Tony Romo.
I would welcome Tony Romo into the Denver Bronco clubhouse with open arms, and then he can just be the old Peyton Manning. We can roll with that defense right back to another Super Bowl. I'd be okay with that.
I'd give you another couple of years, right? I mean, I think of relevance, but with that defense, you kind of have to.
Yep, absolutely. All right, I got nothing. That was it. We did them all. We covered them all.
That's every game? Really?
I'm pretty sure.
Wow, no kidding.
I'm pretty sure.
That's everything.
Good for us. Just a shade over an hour here too, so we did that much better than Sal and I did last week. But thank you all for listening. We will get to some final thoughts, Steve.
All right, thank you all for listening to the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Falafel House. You can like our page on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can go to falafelhouse.com and read the daily fantasy articles that we have coming out all the time. And, of course, stay in touch. Stay tuned for Falafel Playoff Challenge. It is coming. As soon as the playoff teams are all set in the NFL, we will be getting all the details out to that. It's going to be a lot of fun, a very unique challenge. So stay tuned for that. Sal.
Yes, and one more time, we'll remind you to get in your Falafel Festivus airing of Grievance audio clips to falafelhouse@gmail.com. I'm sure after this week, there are a whole group of new people, at least half the people that were left, actually, who would like to complain to us about something that went wrong in the fantasy season. And something I feel bad that I did not point out the other night. I found it out before we went on the air the other night, and I always make sure I point out when my children do something great. My daughter was awarded a full tuition scholarship to Fordham University in New York City. That is a $200,000 scholarship. I could not be prouder of her. I take no credit for that. Wow. That kid works harder than anybody I've ever seen. She has a mentality and a personality that will take her anywhere she wants to go in life, and that is 100% her. So she will absolutely never hear this because she could care less about football, and that's why that's why she'll be successful. So I love you, Madison. Good luck to you, and on to Kevin.
Congratulations to Madison. I also want to congratulate our friend Scott Fish. I think we've talked about it a lot. He does a lot of work for charity with his fantasy. FantasyCares.net is where you can check it out to see what kind of things he's doing. But he raised over $6,100 in his Toys for Tots drive this year, doing fantasy leagues and just people donating for MFL 10s, and it's amazing to see what he does. $6,100 for kids. It's so great. So definitely go to the site, FantasyCares.net, or hit him up on Twitter. He's ScottFish24, I believe, on Twitter. And just check him out and the things that he does. He's a great guy. I think Sal tweeted him out recently as well, so you can check out Sal's tweets. He's just a great guy doing great things for kids. So get in on it next year because those leagues are a lot of fun, and you help out the kids along the way. So just want to say thanks again, Scott, for letting us get involved with that, and congratulations for you guys raising all that money. That's about it for us. We will be back with you on Tuesday for us, which will be Wednesday for most of you. And until then,
early preview show this week.
Preview show. That's right. We're going to do previews a little early in the week. Get you ready for your fantasy championships so that we can get to the Falafel Festivus on Friday. So that's it. Until next time, Steve, hit the button.